on Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
You're listening to The Jan Price Show, and my guest today is award-winning editor Patrick J. Don Vitto, and we're going to talk about his Golden Globe-winning film, The Green Book. Welcome to the show, Patrick.
Thanks, Jan, so much.
It's nice to have you here, and you were just nominated for an ACE Editing Award. How did that feel?
I know, that's very exciting. I was so excited to be nominated by other editors. That's really what means the most to me, is that other editors saw the work and thought it was worthy.
What a great honor, an incredible great honor when your peers honor the work that you're doing and recognize it. So that's absolutely wonderful. So let's talk. I love The Green Book. It was one of my favorite movies of the year. I just had an interview with Dave Karger, who is a TC Turner Classic Movies host, but award-winning entertainment journalist. And we're just talking about Oscars, who's going to be nominated, who's going to win, and all of that. We do this kind of our annual show, and we talked about The Green Book, and I gave all my reasons why I love this movie, because I said, it's the kind of movie that had everything in it. It was the opening film for the Napa Film Festival, and I saw it there, and it had everything. It had humor, it had a message, it's a great buddy picture, but warmth and heart and all of those things that are so you want when you go to see a movie. And as I said, when you walk out of a movie, you want to feel good, and this movie makes you feel good. So what were some of the challenges you had editing this movie?
Well, I think the biggest challenge was probably the balance of the comedy and the drama, just getting that right, because there were a lot of options as far as jokes and bits that were in the body of the movie, and so it really was about finding the right ones that didn't seem like they were jokes, that came out of the reality of the scene, and just the balance going back and forth between them. That's really the toughest part, and the tonally, making that tone match all the way across, because I've worked on movies where I've had to come in and fix, and it seemed like the tone shifts in the middle of the movie, and then it shifts back. And to be able to do that, it's very, very difficult. It's better if you can keep the tone kind of the same all the way through. And
so in this movie, keeping the tone, what exactly did you have to do in the editing room to make sure that the tone stayed consistent?
It was a lot of basically looking at the jokes and deciding if it was the right time for a joke, or maybe we should hold off and let things sink in. For instance, there's a scene where he's outside, Tony Lip, playing craps, and then he gets kind of chastised by Dr. Shirley, and he tells him at the end of that scene, they have to be outside, you didn't. And then they leave. And there was kind of a serious ending. We went right from that to a scene that has a joke, really. It's him writing the letter saying, "Dear Dolores, how are you? I am fine." So those butted together. It was almost too early for a joke. So what I did is I put a shot of them driving, and we created a map for that as well. And they drive to the hotel, and then you have that scene. It gives you a moment to sit and go over your feelings about what just happened. And then when that letter writing hits, you laugh harder because you've had a minute to let that all set in.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. That's interesting. So as an editor, is it just instinctive when you're trying to do this, or are you working very closely with the director, Peter Farrelly, on that, and what the beats are? And because they say, a movie can succeed or fail based on the editing. I mean, it's like you've got the power of making this movie be great or not in the editing room. Do you feel that way? Do you feel like you have that much power when you're in there?
It's initially, when I'm putting it together, it's at least with Pete. With different directors, it's always different. With Pete, he lets me have free rein, so I get to do it however I want to do it. And he'll be shooting, and on weekends he'll come in and give me notes, and I'll do the notes, and I'll kind of shape it the way he's thinking about. But then I always do alternates when I'm cutting, so I always have alternate versions sitting there, things that I think, that might work, and I kind of have them chambered, but I don't necessarily bring them up right away. I don't want to overwhelm the director while they're shooting. So I just kind of hold them off. And then it's a back and forth. I think initially I have a lot more input. And then when we're done shooting and we're in the cutting room, Pete's in there every day and we're working through the movie and we're collaborating on it. So basically I try to accomplish what he's trying to accomplish, but sometimes it's in a way that maybe he wasn't thinking of, or maybe there's a version I can do that would make sense that he never thought of. And so it's kind of the back and forth of editing.
So while the movie is shooting, are you editing along with it, or do you wait until it's entirely shot and then go edit the film?
Yes, I start day one and start cutting scenes so that by the time they're done shooting, I can have, after a few more days, I can have a complete version of the movie. And I can watch it through and make a few more notes before we sit down with the director and go over it. So there's a chance for me to basically get through it. And it's hard when you're doing scene by scene out of order. Until you see the whole thing as a whole, it's a different sort of thing. The assembly cut generally is a crazy cut. I mean, it's like most directors hate it. I know Pete says normally he throws up when he sees the assembly of a movie. And the good thing is he didn't throw up when he saw my assembly. He actually said, this is the best, assembly I've seen. It flows and it's 80% of the way there. So that was really great.
Wow. That is great.
So that was really, we had a great starting point. And then from there, it was just honing the performances and the story and the jokes, basically, and how those worked in. Because they were writing along the way, too. They were writing, the writers were there on the set, and they would add things on the shoot day. And so it was constantly kind of evolving, the script, even as they were shooting.
And does that make your job more difficult?
In some ways, yes, but in some ways, no, because the more choices I have, the better off we're going to be, because if something isn't working, I can change it. If there's a joke that doesn't work and you've got an alternate too, you can replace it or, completely get rid of it, delete it. There was plenty of those throughout the movie that aren't there. Just little things, little bits. But there's also stuff that the actors added that was great. I mean, Mahershala added a line that was one of the best lines in the movie, I think. It really helped the end of the scene.
Which was that? Do you remember?
Which was, they were in the hotel, and they were sitting talking about how he learned to play piano from his mother. And so they had this, the whole sequence. At the end, he says, but, what you do is great, I don't think you should be doing this classical stuff. What you do is great. And he says, thank you, Tony, but no one can play Chopin, not like I can. That line was Mahershala, because in the script you just said, thank you. And that's okay. It's not a great ending for a scene. And especially since the character, all he wanted to do was play classical music. So he had to, he thought he had to have this line that would make it more important. And he was right. He was totally right.
And so sometimes, and maybe I don't know if you can answer this or not, when an actor decides to add a line, is it usually generally something that they discuss ahead of time with the director, or sometimes it just comes out in the scene without them even thinking about that they're going to add the line? Do you know in that case whether that was something?
In that case, yeah. In that case, it was added early. He did actually go to him ahead of time and say, I think we need to end this scene differently. Other times, there are scenes when the actor's just in the flow of it and they just feel like something's coming out and they just let it go because they're in character, they're in the flow. And we always know and they know if it doesn't work, we can cut it out, we can work around it. So then most directors will at least say, here's a take to go ahead and try something you want to try, and that's, I know Pete will do that too. So if we make sure to get the script, and then at a certain point, he'll tell the actors, is there something you want to try here? Let's try it, And then we have that option as well.
That you can do. That's great. Now, I met screenwriter and producer Nick Vallelonga. Is that how you say it? Vallelonga.
Yes.
At the Napa Film Festival, and I met Chris Bowers also. And
Chris is so great, yeah.
Yeah, he's wonderful. And we had a nice discussion about, because obviously when you're watching the movie, you're going, does Mahershala Ali, is he able to really play the piano that well? I mean, because it's pretty amazing. And so Chris let me in on the secret. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about it, but he did work with Mahershala Ali, I guess he said, for months and months. So he could, and many of the scenes, it is Mahershala playing, but when it got to the more difficult scenes, so talk about that, because you had to do the editing on that.
Yeah, it's basically he wanted to be able to sit down and have the stance, the sitting of a piano player, so it would look real, and he wanted to have the hand motions, everything there. So that's really what he was studying. He wasn't necessarily studying, teach me piano, how to play piano in 3 months. So he learned all that, and he was really into it. And then when it came to the shooting, we'd shoot them both. So we'd shoot Chris Bowers playing the piece, and we'd shoot Mahershala playing the piece, and then we'd combine them in the effects, basically. And in fact, one of the scenes is really funny. It's in the middle in a montage. It's a side angle of him playing the piano, and you see the audience in the background. It's actually Mahershala's arms are inside the jacket, and Chris has put his arms into the sleeves of the jacket, and he's playing blind behind him.
What?
It looks like Mahershala's arms, but it's Chris's arms coming in playing. And there's a really funny take. I wish I kept it. It was a really funny take where he finishes, and at the end, Mahershala throws his hands up in a celebration. So there's 4 arms in the scene. It's really, really funny. It was pretty great.
You didn't save that. You didn't. You didn't.
No.
You didn't put. You should have kept that on a bloopers.
Hopefully it'll be on the DVD. Hopefully,
yeah,
we'll see.
A bloopers reel. That would be great. So how difficult was that? Because you had to edit. Chris playing the piano. How difficult was that doing that?
It was. I started. What I would do is I basically cut Chris's stuff. So I would. Put all of the piano playing together with Chris playing it, and then I go back and find the Mahershala pieces, and then when I would talk to the visual effects company, we'd have meetings and we discuss how we're going to do this, and so that's how it was kind of built. It was the base was always starting with Chris, because Chris was the pro player, and it's his hands in almost everything. That's really the truth of it. Is so basically it's getting Mahershala's face on head on his body is basically the trick.
And is that difficult to do?
Yes. It is. But thankfully, I didn't have to actually do that work. That's what the visual effects company did, but they did a really amazing job. Pixel Magic.
Okay. Oh, Pixel Magic. There you go.
Yes, they did their magic.
Yeah, they did. They really did. So what else have you worked with? You worked with Peter Farrelly before? Yeah,
we worked on Movie 43. I had come on to do that with... another director. It was basically a bunch of shorts all put into one movie. So I was hired by Steve Brill to work on his short, and then I stayed on and worked on everybody's shorts. And then Pete decided to reshoot an interstitial, and I cut that. And so we got to know each other a little bit. And then a couple of years later, we did a pilot for a TV series called Cuckoo that never got picked up. And then there was this, and this was like one of those things that just came. I was sent the script, and I'm like, I called over, said, hey, do you have an editor yet? I know you normally use this one person, but are they available? If they aren't, can you throw my name into the hat? And they did, and luckily I got the job.
That's great.
I really loved the script when I read it. So.
Oh yeah, well I love the movies. The script, obviously, it's not a movie without the script, and it's just a great story. But so, do you develop a shorthand once you work with a director? Do you have you've worked with a lot of great directors. You've worked with John Avnet, Jay Roach, Judd Apatow, Donald Petrie, and the list goes on. When you work with them multiple times, do you develop a shorthand, and do you have a shorthand now with Peter Farrelly? Yeah,
it's kind of one of those things where you just it's unspoken words between us. So, like, if he says something, I know what he means, and sometimes I know it before he says it. I'll go, I know you're going to react to this. I'll do something and I'll show it, and in my mind I'm thinking, you know what, I should have done it this way. I know he's going to react to this, and he does. So I kind of gotten to know his style, which is for this movie is a totally different style of comedy. But I could see back when I was working on Cuckoo that the chops he had for drama, and I even told my wife after work one day when I was working on that pilot, I said, I'd really like to see Pete do a drama. I think he'd be amazing. And this came up, and I was like, yeah, great. Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but if you are just tuning in and you are listening to the Jan Price Show all about movies, and my guest today is award-winning editor Patrick J. Don Vitto, and we're talking about
the Golden Globe winning film, The Green Book. And Patrick was just nominated for an ACE Editing Award. So it's very, very exciting. And I'm sure when the Oscar nominations come out, this show is going to air after that, I'm sure The Green Book will be nominated. And certainly Nick and Peter also co-wrote the script too. Is that correct on this film?
That is correct,
okay.
Yeah.
With Nick, and I'm sure both of them will be nominated for Best Screenwriting. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, because everybody was a little surprised. I think that Peter Farrelly was attached to this movie, and certainly the way that this movie turned out, as it's got humor in it, and it's got drama in it. It's got everything in it. I mean, it makes you cry. It makes you, that's when you go to the movies, you want to feel something. I say this a lot, you just want to go and go, that was okay, and you walk out of the theater, or you fall asleep watching the movie, which can happen too. So with this one, it was a little bit different with seeing that Peter Farrelly was involved. So do you know a little bit how he got attached to this?
It's actually a really interesting story. He, the other writer, Brian Hayes Curry, was a friend of his, and he had been in a bunch of his movies in small little roles. And so he ran into him and said, "Hey, what are you up to?" And he said, "Oh, I'm writing this, or I'm going to start writing the script." And he told him the story, and Pete goes, "That's a home run. Let me know when you're done writing it." And so a few months later, he called him and said, "So you're done with that script yet? I want to read it." He goes, "What script?" I said, "The one about the piano player and the bouncer." And he goes, "We haven't even started yet." And he says, "Call Nick, and I want to write it with you. We'll start Monday."
Wow.
And so he called Nick, and Nick had to meet him and, make sure that Pete was the right guy, because he wanted his dad's story. So he met with him, and they liked each other, and then they started writing the script.
Wow. I also like after the after the film premiered, they had the Q&A afterwards, and Nick telling the story, but more importantly, that the Don Shirley did not want him to write this story while he was still alive. Do you know why? I mean, nobody followed up with the why after that.
I'm not quite sure. He never really said why. Now, you could assume from the movie there's one big reason, which I don't know if I should give the spoiler alert away, but of something that happens in the movie that maybe he didn't want people knowing about, because it might affect his career. Maybe it was about his family. I don't know, because from what I've heard is his heirs were not the family. His heirs were his friends. So when he died, everything went to his friends. So I don't know if there was stuff about the family he didn't want out there. I don't really know, but there could be any number of reasons. But I don't know. I guess we'll never know, really.
Yeah, I guess we won't know
for sure.
Yeah, but Nick probably knows maybe why he did, but maybe he doesn't even want to say too. What is your editing style, Patrick, when you're working on a film? Do you keep the storyboard up? Do you have lots of cards all over the place to keep it all together? Do you work with the sound designer? So what's your style of editing?
It really depends on the movie I'm working on. It kind of shifts a little bit with that, but I always have cards up so I can see the scenes based on what reel they're in and their position, and I can physically look at them and go oh, I could move this scene over there. I could switch these around. This movie, there was not a ton of movement around for scenes because it's so linear, so it's hard to reorder stuff. But I'll work differently. I like playing music while I work too, so this was really easy because this is set in the 60s, so you want to just play 60s music and get you in the mood of what you're doing. But also the music supervisors gave me a lot of great music.
I was going to ask you, did they give you Don Shirley's recordings to listen to as you were doing this?
I had Don Shirley's recordings. We didn't use them in the movie because quality-wise, it would have sounded like an old recording. So Chris Bowers re-recorded everything and he played everything for the movie. And then all these songs, we had a very limited music budget, but they found 100 songs and gave them to me as options that they could get for cheap that were great 60s songs. And so while I was cutting, I would decide and place the songs. And the style for that is I'd usually start them full volume, and then as you popped into the car, it would squish down to like a speaker as it were coming out the car speaker. And I'd say about 80% of the songs that I placed are exactly where I placed them in the movie, and they never changed.
Oh, wow.
So I had a lot of influence with music, but it was those guys that gave me this great music that allowed me to do that. I had a lot of options and a lot of great stuff, and so it was a joy to work on with music. I love doing that because I play piano myself, and music's really important to me.
I definitely, and particularly in this movie. How much of the sound editing did you get involved with, or don't you? Do you work with you work with the sound editor, or did you? Obviously, you're working together, but how is that collaboration?
Yeah, we usually have like Andrew DeCristofaro was our sound supervisor, so he came over and his crew came over, and we just sat and watched the movie and kind of told him what things we kind of are looking for sound wise, and then he made notes and tried things, and then we'd kind of say yay or nay to them, and then he'd try some things that maybe we weren't thinking about. We tried some, when he's outside the car and he's looking at the sharecroppers out in the fields, and it's kind of like all the sound kind of comes down a bit. It's really played music heavy, and it's there's still sound there, but it's just light, and so it feels like you're more in his head than you would be if you were playing all the natural sounds that were happening around. So it's stuff like that help emotionally connect you with certain scenes, and so we would work on that, and then we get to the mixing stage, and then we'd refine all that stuff in the mixing stage.
How long did it take you to edit this movie?
Let's see, I started after Thanksgiving, and it was we came back in February from New Orleans, and by April I had we were still in the about halfway through the director's cut. We started screening it, so we started during the director's cut screening it. By the time we were done, it was the end of July, so it was about 7-8 months total. But we finished early, and we just started screening the movie because the more you can get it in front of people, the earlier the better, because it gives you an idea what's working and not even by comments, just by the feeling in the room. If you're sitting in a room and you are watching a movie, you can tell when people are uninterested. You can feel it. And so it really helps you go, you know what, we should tighten up that scene. We're losing them right there. And so that really helps you get to this tighter version. And we're still 2 hours and 10 minutes with credits, so we're not a short movie. No. But I think it doesn't feel like 2 hours and 10 minutes when you're sitting watching it.
No, it does not. It does not. Some movies you're like looking at your watch, okay, when is this going to be over? But not this movie, not at all. It didn't feel like that at all. When do you know, this is my last question, when do you know that you finally have the perfect cut on the movie?
Well, that's tough. Wow, it's hard. You never really, it's always kind of evolving. I know that if there wasn't an end date, I think that people would recut movies into infinity. Luckily, there's an end date usually, and you got to finish by this time. But this was really, we got to it pretty early, and we were like feeling really good about it. And then when I knew we were on the right track, we went to screen in Long Beach, and they do all the screenings where they score the movie and everything, and we scored 100. And so I thought, I think we're on the right track for this.
I think you were.
So that when that happened, it kind of like solidified all our thoughts, and then we continued. We screened again, and we tightened it a little bit, and then we locked. So it was pretty quick there right at the end. Right. So when the director's cut was done, it was all pretty fast after that.
It was great. Well, Patrick, thank you so much for being on the show. It's fascinating. I love talking to you. Yes.
Thank you, Jan.
You're welcome. Go to The Jan Price Show on Facebook to learn more about upcoming shows, and while you're there, like my page to listen to the Price Movie Minute, movie reviews, and to listen to archive shows that you may have missed. Go to thejanpriceshow.com.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1, streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
The Ozio Theater in downtown Monterey is now open every day, showing independent and foreign films. The Ozio Theater has new concession offerings, including beer, wine, hard cider, and their homemade Lush Slush. You can now schedule private event screenings for community charity events, birthdays, anniversaries, or just a fun gathering of friends. For more information, visit the Ozio Theater online at oziotheater.com.